Let me begin with a statement which I hear often in India. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. It's normally translated as, well, whatever that sat, however it gets translated depends on the individual, that different people say different things about it. And normally what happens is, that is to show the pluralism of India, because they say it allows multiple truths. Many truths in India. We don't have a single truth. It's absolute rubbish. There are no 1 billion truths or 10 billion truths. There's only one truth. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 in decimal arithmetic. The sum of angles of three angles of a triangle is 180 degrees in a two-dimensional space. And there is absolutely no way truth is different for different people. It's only if you're in a three-dimensional space or n-dimensional space that the sum of the three angles of a triangle is not 180 degrees, not otherwise. In 2 dimensions, it's the same thing everywhere. Greece, India, and so on. You can't fly in carpet, magic carpets. There is gravitational force. If you want to counteract that, you need energy, and no carpet is going to give you that. It's a magical carpet. In other words, there are no 100 million truths, there's only one truth. Indian notion of truth is very robust. It has got only one notion of truth. Not 100, we are not relativists. We never were. So, ekam sat vipraha bahudha vadanti, it doesn't mean each has his own truths. No, it's not true. Truth is, for everyone, it's the same. But the sentence says something, no, it's not about truth. It's talking about sat. Ekam sat. Vipraha bahudha vadanti. They say all kinds of things. In multiple different ways. There's only one sat. Now, what exactly is this? Now, I don't enter into a deep Brahma Jignasa here. I mean, this is not the place to do that, though we should do that someday. See, Indians make a very, very, very strong distinction between real and existence. I'll explain to you very soon what I mean. I'm using English words. Real picks up sat. Existence is astitva, being there in multiple ways. Now, the West also, Western culture also, makes a distinction between the real and the existence. But they have a huge problem. Who? The Western culture. Why? Is it their God, biblical God, is also real? That is, he's outside. To them, real means being outside the time and space. He's not in this world. This world is a world of existence. He's not here. But God has to work in this world. God has to be effective in the world. God has to do this or that in the world. He does it. Apart from sending his son, there are who did miracles, etc., etc. God works, as they say, in mysterious ways in this world. Unfortunately, this world has a following property. If some object, whichever the object is, has to work in this world, that is, have causal effect in this world, it must exist. Non-existent entities cannot have causal effect on this world. For example, if there are no ghosts, there is no way on earth ghosts are able to move objects in this world. Spirit, if it doesn't exist, it cannot do anything. So whatever works in this world, has effect in this world, must exist. And if it exists, it is one object amongst any number of other objects that exist in the world. Because God has to work in the world, God has to exist in the world as well. So there is a famous discussion, problem of immanence and transcendence of God. God is immanent in this world, meaning he exists in the world. He is transcendent, meaning He's beyond world, beyond space-time. Beyond world does not mean outside Earth, beyond cosmos. He does not exist. That's what it means. Outside space-time. So he is a transcendent, but he has to work in the world, he's immanent. So how can God be both transcendent and immanent? For millennia, they have been thinking about it, asking questions about it, because if God did not work in this world, God did not exist in the world, if God would not exist at all, oh my God, what happens to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam? It's catastrophe. But here is an interesting historical point. Whether God exists or not is a question that emerges, which is in Jacob 17th, 18th century France?
16th century.
No, it's late 17th, but mostly 18th century.
18th, okay.
Yeah.
First time the question of atheism, that is, does God exist or not? First time emerges in 18th century France, early 18th century, late 17th century. Until then, it's unthinkable to ask the question, does God exist? There is a famous proof called, there's a famous holy man called Saint Anselm. He is supposed to have produced the first ontological proof for the existence of God. Ontology means things that exist in the world. So he is supposed to have developed the proof for the existence of God. And that's 13th century, 12th century. But if you go to read that book, it's not at all about existence of God. He doesn't ask the question, does God exist? But what he asked, this fantastic thing to discuss, I won't go there. But the point is, he didn't ask the question. He did not, he could not. Because till the 18th century, it never occurred to the 17th century, 18th century, it never occurred to anybody to ask the question, does God exist? There is a statement in the Bible. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. But that's a fool, and nobody took him seriously. Only a fool can say that, nobody says it. Because God exists obviously. Look at the nature, look at human beings, God exists. So only 17th, 18th century discussion begins about the existence of God. Until then, it is very clear God was real, God was the truth, and so on. But a problem begins because God has also to exist here. He must be an object in the universe. Therefore, you should ask the question, does God exist? Is there a God? If you go to Amazon, type existence to find all the books on existence. 99% is about God's existence, not about what existence means. Does God exist? So existence question, in fact, is discussed about whether or not God exists. That's the most important question. Why does this happen? But once God is one object like any other, this is a coffee cup, this is God. They're two objects. So God must be limited, God must be finite, God must have properties. No, that's not possible because God is real, he is outside cosmos. But if he exists here, my friend, unfortunately, he must have these properties. So this is a very huge problem in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. What Indians did, they also make the distinction between the real and existence. But they keep it completely separate. What level? It's almost mind-blowing when you realize the consistency of this way of thinking 3,000 years ago, which they sustained for at least 1,500 years. They said real and existence are different, meaning what? What is real cannot exist. What exists is not real. How did they make that distinction? Well, what language did they use? Well, they said the real, that is para. The unreal existing, that is apara. Between para and apara, para doesn't exist, apara exists. But here is an interesting thing, because we are Indians, aren't we? They said, they thought like this. Unlike the Semitic religions, we believe that the only thing that is there exists, is a cosmos. Outside, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. So if you want anything, if you want to access anything, you want to get anything, it must be in Apara. It must be in Iha. It must be in Vishwa. It must be in Jagat. It must be there. Otherwise, we can't access it, right? If an object is outside time and space, what's the point? Might be there, might not be there, what the hell? Doesn't do anything. So they said they didn't put para outside time and space. But it does not exist. But they said human beings access para. I'll explain. I won't make philosophical. I'll give you a very, very concrete example. That means we can access it. If we can access it, we can only access it in Apara, in Iha. So they did not say Apara also exists in Para, then it will become another object. No, no, no. Apara is accessible in Apara. You can access, you can have entry, you can experience what does not exist in Apara. Now, this is nothing mysterious about it. Look at the language first. From our language, and how we do it also, in every culture does this. You see someone and you say, I hope you know a little bit of Sanskrit. He has got virtues. He has got tejas. Yeah, tejas. Our word, not English tejas. Look at him. The tejas radiates. Look at the word tejas. Now, it is not a physical property. It's not a psychological property. Yeah, but you're accessing it. If it is a physical property, I should be able to say what it is, whether we know, whether they can investigate or not. Psychological property, you could say that. No, virtues, stages. Or in English, oh, he's a charismatic man. All right? What is his charisma? It's not a property of the body. It's not a property of his personality. But you see it, you experience it. And this is a person has charisma. You know, when that guy comes into the meeting, you can sense his presence. Presence is not psychological, biological, physiological, but you sense it. What the hell? What are you sensing? Sensing what is not there. Does not mean it's imaginative. It's something that can be accessed. It can even go to even more trivial level. You go to Starbucks or Coffee Day or whatever. I have said it a number of times. Today, fantastic how coffee tasted. It was the same coffee. It's the same tongue. It's the same person, same hour. But today, coffee, tasted. That is the taste. Tomorrow it does not. Yesterday it did not. So what exactly is it? You tasted. You tasted something that didn't exist, but you had access. You go to a house. This house is a character. It has character. House having a character? Yes. We experience it. We sense it. We access it. In other words, infinite number of ways in our daily language, we talk about accessing things that do not exist. That does not mean we're hallucinating, does not mean we're imagining. No, we can access things that have no existence. So Indian said, that is para. Para is that. What? Accessing what does not exist. Human beings do so everywhere. And where is para? Where can you access it? In Apara, of course, in Iha. That's the only place we have. That's the only thing we know. This is where you're born, this is where we die. Everything should happen here. So, when para is accessible in Apara, para is not Apara. So, Sat, when we say, is para. Now, what the hell does that mean? If it does not exist, it doesn't have properties. Guna, cannot have it. If it doesn't have properties, you can't distinguish it between two things. To distinguish any one object from another, they must differ in properties. If it's para, there are no properties, you can't distinguish. But if you want to talk about it, how do you say? Ekam Sat. There is nothing else like Sat. That's not mean there's one. Because mathematically, if there's one, there is two. If there's two, there's three. Weak mathematical and strong mathematical induction. You can't say one and stop there. No, if there's one, there is two. If there's two, there's three. So Ekam Sat does not mean there's only one Sat. There is nothing like Sat. So Ekam Sat. There is nothing like Para. There is only one Para. Okay, I'm not counting, but there is nothing else like that. Ekam Sat. Vipraha bahudha vadanti. What is it? How do you talk about it? This Para. Well, why is this a problem? Because you see, your language is language of properties, forces, events, and so on. In other words, the language of existence. They can only talk about existence. Because even when you talk about non-existent entities, we talk about entities that could have existed but do not exist. Our language, there's a full science, ordinary language, whichever language, is language of existence. So, I can talk in different ways, using different languages of existence about the Para. Again, it's not something, you can also make true claims about Para. Very simple. If I say, Para is blue, Sarika says Para is yellow. Yeah, both are true. Both are true. There are different ways of talking about it. But so, or you can go the other way. Neti argument. Para is neither long nor short. Para is neither big, is neither fat nor thin. Para is smaller than the atom but bigger than the cosmos. And so on and so on and so on. In other words, you can say Para is everything that does not have the properties of Apara. Neti. It's not this, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that. They're all true statements about Para, true. So they're not bullshit. No, they're not. They give you knowledge. Yes, they do. What knowledge do they give? They say, look, Para is not Para. To make you understand that. So, Ekam Sat, Vipraha bahudha vadanti means stays. There's nothing stupid. There's no multiple truths. And that's why the story about blind men, 10 blind men and the elephant. Same thing. You can describe it in different ways, using different ways of talking about existence. But Para is not that. Same thing. Atma Brahma. Aham Brahmasmi. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Go wherever you want. None of them violate this condition. That is, Para does not exist, but Para is accessible in Apara. So Indians were extraordinarily consistent. That is why, and look at the strange thing. Atma is a Para, which means what? It does not act in the world. It cannot. What is supposed to be the property of Atma? He is not an agent. Atma doesn't do anything. If it was in existence in the world, you don't have objects that don't do anything. You just kick them out. That's what we in science do. What is this object? What is this particle doing? Nothing. We just postulate it, kick it off. You can't have objects that don't do anything. Just hang around doing what? Nothing. And that's not possible. Nature doesn't allow that. We say we just kick it off. Indians don't say that. Atma is hanging around somewhere doing nothing. No. Atma does not exist, but it's real. Atma is accessible, but does not exist. So, Atma is not an agent. Of course, it cannot be. Consistency, my friends, that's what Indian thought has. Nobody has said Atma functions. They say Atma is a Sakshi. It's a way of describing. But to be a Sakshi, you need eyes. You need brain to process the information. That means it must have a body. Come on. No, nobody, so Atma Sakshi, so it plays the role of a Sakshi, etc. These are strategies of accessing Atma. When you see it, when you're interacting, don't you feel somebody is watching from behind? Yeah, that's Atma. Does not mean Atma is watching you like this. It's a way of accessing Atma. In other words, wherever you go, whether it's Advaitins, Vishistadvaitins, you go wherever you want. Our thinking. And it's about human beings. It's not some deep metaphysical subject. No. It's our experience. Apara is our experience, daily experience. It's talking about that. And it says, how is it possible for us human beings, using these experiences in the world, to become happy, have ananda, however you want to formulate. Is.
To give you some rest, because you have been continuously talking, I will add some small interventions here of the consequences of what till now Balu narrated. Now, so in a way, if you take that as para, so this Sat, Gnana, etc., they will all be part of para. That's first. And when we talk about Satya, etc., in the language, they are property of the sentences. They talk about the things in this world. Now, if you look from this way, what Balu started off saying that, in Christianity also they make this distinction, but they have this problem that God is outside and he has to come and do something in this world, etc. We have separated it. Now, we also actually have made it beautifully understandable in the sense that now Saraswati is always known as Paradevata. So, so she doesn't come down. And when we have to bring our God somewhere because they can't exist, the only way that you do is you call it Apara. So you bring, for example, Vishnu to Apara. So Rama is Apara. So therefore he has all the properties, like he has birth and he has death. Because everything that an object that exists in the world have is beginning and an end, birth and death, etc. All these things that come. So therefore Rama was born here, he died, Krishna was born here. He gets all the properties of Apara. But what is more fascinating is all these Aparavataras that we have, they are impossible creatures. I mean, it is impossible to see anybody acting in this world the way Krishna has done it. Or you can't have somebody like Narasimha born in this world. I mean, you cannot. In a way, what Balu was describing is that even if you want to talk about, there is a way. So this Apara gives reference for people to look at para. So you can't have this a serious, textual understanding of what is this Sat, what is this Brahman, etc. But if you look at this Apara, so it is recognizable, Narasimha is recognizable, and Rama is recognizable, Krishna is recognizable, but there are also, you can't have such people. You can't have such creatures in the world. So therefore, you know that they don't exist. In the sense they're para. So in a way, Balu's reference in the text that he has given, that when Indians have actually communicated this knowledge to people, there is no dumbing down, there is no vulgarization of science. In fact, they made it that even the most ordinary people could pick this thread and understand. So when somebody is using, Rama, Krishna, Puja, etc., they know, this is God. I mean, such a creature is not possible in this world. I can't be that. So in a way, they are pointing towards para, but which doesn't exist. So in a way, these ideas have been transmitted to ordinary people in a way that is comprehensible without sort of cutting down the knowledge, without simplifying it, but it has been given in a way that people can follow it. Have I said it correctly, Balu? I mean,
Yeah, but I just should, absolutely. But let me just add one or two things so it becomes even more clear. It is in the form of a question. Okay. I have 15, 20 minutes. I've spoken about para, apara, all these things. You say, I mean, it's very difficult to understand it. It's all philosophical and abstract. Absolutely right. And now the introduction of what does it mean to be Indian? If you want to transmit this knowledge to a peasant who doesn't know anything about physics, logic, metaphysics, and so on, how do you communicate this para apara to that guy? And that is what Chaitra was talking about. Take someone like Narasimha. There is no way on earth, on this earth that we know, or maybe somewhere else, extraterrestrial beings, alien and so on, forget that. On earth, you cannot have a creature which is half lion, half man, and live. Not possible. The biology also says it, our experience also says it. It cannot exist. Cannot exist. But Narasimha is, we say, an avatar, not Apara. Apara is how Vishnu comes. As an avatar of Vishnu, we say, not an Apara. And look at how it is, Prahlada and his father. Where is he? Everywhere. Everywhere, yeah. Is he in this pillar? Yes. Break the pillar. What does it mean? It doesn't have one place. Apara is everywhere, yes, of course. It has to be. Why? Because it's para. It's not confined to one object. So it must be here, it must be there. It must also be in the pillar or outside the pillar. It doesn't matter. What comes out? Half man, half lion. Cannot exist. Of course, para does not exist. But by seeing it as Narasimha, you give access to a person of what para is in Apara. Without using the word para, without using the word Apara. And just one more thing, look at all our statues in temples. And any number of people who ask me why we have such ugly statues, 4 arms and so on and so on. And all kinds of stories have been spreading around for that. Fine. Everybody has his own story. Here is my answer to that question on the basis of what I said. Look, if you are a consistent thinker, like Indians were, you must have some way of identifying something as para. Some way. Like, for example, Krishna, he can take any form. If there's blue and a peacock thing and a flute, we know it's Krishna. There's some confusion between Parvati and Lakshmi. Parvati or Lakshmi, I'm not very sure. But Saraswati, because he's sitting with Veena, no problem. So Ishvara or Ganesha, easily identifiable creatures. We know they're all Paradevatas. So what did they do? And that is why the most illiterate peasant in India go to their local temples. Most of the times, though there are some exceptions here and there, all their bloody this thing have 4 arms. 4 arms is impossible on earth. 4 arms. It's not Apara. It is para. So I can give 4 arms. So that's why we have to give 4 arms. And I was telling my Sanskrit friends the other day, I'm sure you'll have noticed this. Ganesha has 4 arms, right? Look at Balagangadhara. He's only got 2 arms. None of you have ever asked the question, how is it possible? Balagangadhara has got only 2, but when he grows up, he gets 4. None of us ask it. But we recognize Balagangadhara. We have no problems with it. And we recognize Ganesha, 2 arms, 4 arms. Why do we not bother about it? Because it's not Apara. You say, what the hell are you? It's para. It's a way of recognizing, accessing para. It doesn't matter whether Balagangadhara has only got 2 and Vruddha Ganesha, he doesn't go Vruddha, he remains Bala, but even though he's got 4. That is why his stomach gets blown out and he uses a snake and runs on a mouse. Impossible things, all of them, of course. They have to be, because if it was not, they would exist in Apara, then they are not Paradevatas. This is how a culture transmitted knowledge without dumbing it down. This, what you and I are discussing abstractly, Apara peasant knows it. In India, illiterate peasant, because his temple goddess has got 4 arms. Are you not amazed at this thinking process behind? How in God's name did they think about this? How in God's name did they transmit it? How in God's name did they take roots in Indian culture? Incredible consistency. The only place where I have seen it is in logic and in some mathematics and some theories in physics. Nowhere else, except this, of course. This consistency. 3,000 years ago. My God, where did they discuss? How did they do research? But they must have done it, because this is impossible without research. These are the results of research. This, my friends, is the Indian culture. And this is what is in danger. And this is what we, you and me, together, we can access it again, because you're understanding it. This is what it means to use 21st century language to understand. And we develop it not only for us, for the whole of the world, because we need it. We need it very, very bad. That is the prospect. This is the perspective. You had the retrospect. This is the prospect, root. And it is the root of knowledge. I rest.